In a dusty little desert town, a young black woman brings the last portion of her family's dinner each evening to an old, frail man living alone across the road. People laugh at her, calling her naive and foolish. But despite all the gossip, she keeps showing up every night. Over those quiet shared meals, they become the only warmth in each other's lives. Until one morning, the old man passes away and leaves behind a letter, one that breaks her heart, heals it, and changes her life forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe. I've got something special for you tomorrow. Maple Hollow was the kind of town people forgot about the moment they drove past the last gas station, quiet, overheated, and worn down to the bone. Houses leaned like they were tired of standing, the air shimmered with dust, and the streets stayed empty even on the busiest days. It wasn't a bad place, it was just a place that life had stopped checking in on. Lena Reeves stepped outside her family's small wooden house like she did every morning, closing the door softly so she wouldn't wake her kid sister. She was 21, tall and slim, the kind of girl who moved like she had somewhere important to be, even when all she had was $3 in her pocket and a list of groceries she couldn't afford. Her mother's voice floated from inside, thin and tired but still trying to sound strong. "Don't stay out long, baby, it's already too hot." Lena promised she wouldn't and headed down the steps, feeling the heat rising off the dirt road like a warning. She carried a small cloth bag, holding it tight as if squeezing it could somehow multiply the coins inside. Kids played in the street, kicking a crushed soda can, laughing the way only kids in a broken town could laugh, loud, careless, like they didn't know yet what life could take from them. A man waved lazily from his porch, fanning himself with yesterday's newspaper, and somewhere in the distance a radio played a gospel song that sounded too slow for the heat. Lena was already sweating by the time she reached the corner. She wiped her forehead, tightened her grip on her bag, and kept walking. She always did. She had gotten good at moving forward even when she didn't have the energy for it. And just when she thought she'd make it to the little store without anything unusual happening, she spotted a woman on the opposite side of the road, cursing at an old car that had clearly given up. Smoke drifted out from under the hood like the car itself was sighing. Lena didn't even think. She crossed the road so fast the woman flinched. "Ma'am, you need help." The woman blinked at her, wiping sweat from her face. "Lord, yes, child, this thing died on me again." Lena dropped her bag without a second thought. "Let's push it, I'll count to 3. The woman laughed breathlessly. "You sure? It's heavy, I've pushed worse," Lena said, cracking a smile, and she meant it. They pushed together until the car rolled into the shade of a giant oak tree. The woman leaned on the hood, trying to catch her breath. "You're stronger than you look," Lena grinned. "It's the beans. They keep me going." The woman laughed for real this time, then reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled dollar. "Here, honey, for your trouble." Lena shook her head immediately. "No, ma'am, I just wanted to help." The woman stared at her, surprised, like she didn't know people still said things like that. "Well, the world could use more like you." Lena didn't say anything back, but her chest felt lighter as she picked up her bag. Even a small good thing could make a heavy day feel different. But Maple Hollow didn't let good moments last long. As Lena walked into the grocery store, the heat pressed down again, the fan above her rattled like it was begging for retirement, and the place smelled faintly of dust and old fruit. She picked up beans, 1 onion, a little salt, just enough to stretch dinner for 3 people, and counted her coins twice before paying. She stepped back outside and immediately froze. A sharp bark cut through the heat, followed by a painful yelp. It came from near a pile of scrap metal by the side of the road. Lena saw a small brown dog trapped, its hind leg caught deep in a twisted piece of wire. The animal struggled and cried out again. Lena rushed over, dropping her groceries. "Easy, little one," she whispered. The dog tried to pull away, but the wire tightened around its leg. Lena winced and pushed her fingers into the metal, ignoring how sharp it was, ignoring the sting when it cut her skin. "I'm not gonna hurt you," she murmured. With one last tug, the wire bent and the little dog slipped free. It limped toward her, tail low but wagging. Lena smiled and touched its head lightly. "See, you're okay now." The dog licked her hand once, quick, grateful, then trotted off like it had somewhere important to be. Lena picked up her groceries and kept heading home, not noticing the people watching from their porches. Some nodded politely, others whispered. Because in Maple Hollow kindness was suspicious, kindness meant too soft, too giving, won't survive long. Lena had heard it all before. She still smiled anyway. That was just who she was. And on that heavy hot afternoon, before she ever knew the old man across the road, before the nights of bringing food, before the letter that would break her heart open and change her life, Lena Reeves walked home with the sun burning her shoulders and a strange feeling rising quietly inside her. Like something was about to shift. Like her story was already in motion, even if she hadn't realized it yet. The next morning, Maple Hollow woke under a gray, heavy sky, the kind that felt like it was holding something back. Lena stood at her window, rubbing sleep from her eyes, listening to her mother's shallow breathing in the next room and the soft rustle of her sister curling deeper under the blankets. For a moment, she thought she'd get a quiet start. Then something outside caught her attention, small at first, almost easy to ignore. Across the road, on the porch of the house that leaned hardest toward the dirt, sat a man she had never really noticed before. He didn't move, not an inch. Just sat there with his back bent like the years had pushed him down and left him that way. His coat was too big, the elbows patched, the buttons mismatched like they'd been fixed by a hand that wasn't steady anymore. A faded cap hid most of his face, but his hands, thin, trembling, marked with veins, rested on his knees. And beside him, right at his feet, sat a dented metal bowl. Empty. Lena frowned. Maple Hollow had plenty of people who struggled, but this man, she had never seen him up close. Maybe she had passed by 100 times without really looking. Maybe everybody had. She stepped out onto the porch, letting the screen door click behind her. She tried to act like she was just stretching, but her eyes couldn't leave the figure across the road. There was something about the stillness of him, like he wasn't waiting on anything but had nowhere else to go. Just then, Mrs. Carter from next door shuffled outside in her robe, cigarette already lit, hair in curlers that looked older than Lena. She caught Lena staring and smirked. "Don't waste your eyes on that one," she said, smoke curling out with the words. "That's Walter Hill, been sitting out there for years, doesn't talk, doesn't ask for help, doesn't want visitors." Lena turned. "What happened to him, Mrs.?" Carter shrugged like it wasn't worth thinking about. "Life, I guess. Used to be a carpenter. Built half the porches in this town back when folks still cared. Had a daughter too, bright girl. Left for the city and never looked back." She flicked her cigarette into the dirt. "He's just stuck. That's all." She headed inside, leaving the smell of smoke behind her. But the silence lingered, hanging heavy between Lena and the house across the road. Lena didn't know why, but something tugged inside her, a small pull, the same kind she felt yesterday when she helped the stranger with the broken-down car and freed that scared little dog from the fence. It wasn't dramatic. Just a whisper inside her, "Don't look away." She went back inside, made breakfast for her sister, helped her mother take her morning medicine, and tried to push the image of the man on the porch out of her mind. But every time she passed the window, he was still there. Same posture. Same stillness. Same empty bowl sitting like a quiet confession of need he refused to speak. By noon she stepped outside pretending to hang laundry, but really she was looking again. In the daylight she could see him better, white hair thinning, skin lined like cracked wood, eyes lowered as if he were reading something on the ground no one else could see. A group of teenage boys rode by on their bikes, laughing loud, careless. One of them shouted something cruel about the porch ghost. The others cackled as they pedaled off. Walter didn't flinch, didn't lift his head, didn't defend himself, just stayed still. That was the moment something in Lena tightened, not anger exactly, but a kind of ache. Because she knew what it felt like to be talked about, judged, sized up by people who didn't know the first thing about her life. Later, at the grocery store, she heard whispers again, this time about him. That old beggar's still out there. Man should be in a home somewhere. Or at least stop looking so pathetic. Lena didn't respond. She never did, but the words followed her all the way home, sticking to her like the dust on her shoes. And when she stepped onto her own porch again, the sun setting low behind the trees, she looked across the road and saw him still sitting there, same spot, same bowl, same silence, but this time, his head lifted for just 1 second. Their eyes met. There was no anger there, no shame. Just tired recognition, like he was surprised somebody had finally seen him. He nodded, a small polite gesture, like a man who still remembered his manners even if the world had forgotten his name. Lena nodded back before she even realized she had done it. Inside, she tried to eat dinner, but the image wouldn't let her go. The trembling hands, the empty bowl, the boys shouting, the way the sun hit his shoulders making him look even smaller. She went to the window again, aware of her mother watching her with that familiar mix of worry and understanding. "You're staring at him again," her mother said gently. "He's been sitting there all day," Lena whispered. "He doesn't look like he's choosing to be alone." Her mother sighed. "Some folks just get left behind, baby." Lena swallowed. "Doesn't mean they deserve it." That night, long after everyone else had gone to sleep, she sat by the window again. Through the thin curtain she could still see the shape of him. Still, silent, waiting for something he probably knew wasn't coming. She didn't know why, but the thought hurt. More than she expected. The moonlight settled across the road, and Lena whispered into the quiet, almost embarrassed by her own voice, "No one should have to sit hungry in the dark." She didn't know it yet. Not tonight, not in that small moment where her heart cracked open just a little, but this was the beginning. The first step toward something that would change her life forever. That evening, Maple Hollow felt heavier than usual. The heat hadn't broken, the air clung to the walls, and the tiny kitchen in Lena's house filled with the smell of beans simmering too long in an old pot. Lena stirred them slowly, more out of habit than hunger, listening to her mother's quiet breathing from the next room and her sister humming to a radio that barely got reception. It should have felt like every other night. It didn't. She glanced out the window again. Walter Hill was still there. Same porch, same bowl, same silence swallowing him whole. Something inside her tightened. Not panic, not pity, just certainty. Like the day had been pointing her toward this moment since sunrise. Without saying anything, she grabbed a clean glass jar from the shelf, one they used to keep sugar back when sugar wasn't a luxury. She filled it with beans, tore half a slice of cornbread from a small pan, and set it on top. Her hands shook just a little, but she tightened the lid anyway. Her mother's voice drifted in, sleepy and suspicious. "Lena, what are you doing with that jar?" Lena hesitated. "I'll be right back." Before her mother could say anything else, she stepped out into the fading light. The sun dipped low behind the trees, turning the whole road gold like it was trying to make the old houses seem softer. Dust floated in the air with every step she took. Her heart beat a little faster, not fear, just that strange pull again. The porch steps creaked as she climbed them. Walter looked up, startled by the sound. His eyes were clouded with age but clear enough to show surprise. Nobody walked toward him. "Not in years." "Evening," Lena said, voice gentler than she expected. He blinked, adjusting his glasses like he wasn't sure she was real. "Evening, miss." She held out the jar, both hands steady now. "You look like you could use something warm." Walter stared at the jar for a long second. Too long. His fingers hovered a moment before he reached out, careful, almost scared he might drop it. "You bringing this for me?" "It's just dinner," she said quickly. "Nothing fancy." He swallowed, and his hands trembled harder as he held the jar close like it was something breakable, something sacred. His voice cracked a little. "You didn't have to trouble yourself." "It's no trouble," Lena said. "There's enough to share." He unscrewed the lid slowly, and the smell of beans drifted into the warm air. Something shifted in his face, just slightly, but enough for her to see the man he used to be before life got so loud and lonely. "Lord," he whispered, closing his eyes for a moment. "That smells like home." Lena didn't know what to say to that. So she didn't say anything, she just stepped back, letting him take the first bite. Walter ate slow like he didn't want to rush the moment. The crickets buzzed in the grass. A screen door slammed somewhere down the street. The evening stretched out around them, warm and strange and gentle in a way that didn't feel like Maple Hollow at all. When he finished, he looked up, eyes glistening under the porch light. "Thank you," he said softly. "You don't know what this means." Lena managed a small smile. "Eat before it gets cold." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Then after a breath, "Name's Walter. Walter Hill." "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Walter," she said. He smiled, a real one, small but honest. Then almost like he was afraid she would vanish, he added, "God bless you, Lena." She froze. She hadn't told him her name. She didn't even remember introducing herself anywhere near him. "Have a good night," she said, stepping down the porch slowly. When she reached the road, the air felt different, lighter, but also heavier in places she couldn't name. She could still feel his eyes on her back, a soft weight instead of a burden. Inside, her mother was waiting, arms crossed but eyes softer than her tone. "You fed him, didn't you?" Lena nodded. "He was hungry, Mama." Her mother sighed, shaking her head the way mothers do when they're worried but proud in the same breath. "We're hungry too most nights. We'll be fine," Lena said quietly. Her mother watched her for a long moment, then whispered, "You got your daddy's heart too big for this world." Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because across the road, on a porch that had forgotten warmth, an old man held an empty jar like it was something precious. And Lena Reeves went to bed that night, not knowing she had just changed the rest of her life. Over the next few days, something in Maple Hollow shifted, quiet, subtle, the kind of change only one or two people would notice. But Lena felt it every evening the sun started to dip. It was the same pull in her chest, the same stillness across the road, the same sense that somebody was waiting for her even if he'd never say it out loud. Every night, just before dinner, she'd set aside a portion before calling her sister to the table. A little beans, maybe a piece of cornbread, sometimes scraps from whatever she could stretch. She tried not to make it obvious, but her mother always noticed. She just didn't fight it anymore. And every night, when the sky turned orange, Lena crossed the road. Walter was always there. Same chair, same old coat, same bowl by his feet, like a stubborn reminder of how long he'd been forgotten. But something else started to show too, the way his eyes lifted when he saw her, the way his shoulders loosened, the way his voice warmed up like it had been rusted shut for years and someone finally turned the hinge the right way. "Even in Miss Lena," he'd say, smiling like this tiny routine was the best part of his day. "You ready to eat?" she'd reply, handing him the jar. The rhythm became so natural, so familiar, that Lena didn't even think about it anymore. Some nights they talked, some nights they didn't, but even the silence felt comfortable. One evening, after he took the jar, Walter chuckled a little. "You keep bringing supper like this, I'm gonna start thinking I'm rich." Lena laughed. "You better act like it then. Rich men eat slow." His laugh was rough, rusty, like something he hadn't used in years, but it came easier every night. "Ain't had reason to laugh in a long time," he said. "Guess you brought that back too." Word got around, of course. Maple Hollow didn't let anything stay quiet. People whispered at the store, "That Reeves girl's feedin' that old porch ghost again. She'll never get ahead if she keeps giving everything away. She's too soft, this town'll eat her alive." Lena heard every word, didn't answer a single one, but she did lift her head a little higher. One night, as she handed Walter a fresh piece of cornbread, two men from down the road pretended to fix the same wagon wheel they'd been fixing for a week. Their voices carried just enough to sting. "Look at that one," muttered. "Girl thinks she's a saint, reckon she's expectin' something in return," the other said, smirking. Walter's jaw tightened. Lena felt heat rise in her chest. She didn't shout, didn't make a scene. She just said softly, "Ignore them. They don't know better." Walter nodded, but his voice was quiet. "Words don't change hunger." She sat on the porch rail, swinging her legs lightly. "Let 'em talk, they'll get tired eventually." "That so?" he asked, smiling sideways. "It's either that," she said, "or they start talking about someone else." He laughed again, a real one, warm, surprised, human. And as the days rolled on, Lena started learning pieces of him, little parts scattered like old photographs he didn't know how to show anyone anymore. Walter used to build houses, fix fences, mend doors, anything made of wood, he could give it life. He had a daughter once, Maya, who read better than he ever could, who he worked every extra hour for. "She wanted more," he said one evening, staring out at the road, "and I guess she found it. Just forgot I was part of what she left behind." Lena didn't push him, didn't offer answers, she just listened, and that alone was enough to soften him. Some nights she came home to her mother waiting on the porch. "Folks are talkin'," her mother would say. "They always do," Lena answered. "You don't owe that man anything." "I know, and yet," Lena shrugged, "it feels right." Her mother sighed, half defeated, half proud. "You're something else, baby." But Lena didn't feel like something else. She just felt responsible. Because every night when she crossed the road, Walter looked less like a man fading out of the world and more like someone finding pieces of himself again. He ate slower. talked more, sat straighter. And sometimes, when the porch light hit just right, she swore she could see a version of him from years ago. Strong hands, bright eyes, a man who once built things that lasted, even if life hadn't lasted for him the way he hoped. But something else was building now. Something no one in Maple Hollow saw coming. A connection, a routine, a quiet partnership between a girl who gave too much and a man who'd spent years with nothing left to receive. Neither of them knew it yet. But these evenings weren't just kindness. They were the beginning of a bond that was about to pull both their lives in directions they never expected. As the summer in Maple Hollow dragged on, the heat got heavier, the days got slower, and the evenings turned into something Lena could almost predict. But one thing she couldn't predict, one thing she didn't expect, was how much Walter was changing. Not his body, that part was getting worse, but his spirit, that was coming back to life, a little more each night. It started small. One evening, she noticed he was breathing harder, his hands shaking more than usual when he lifted the jar. But he talked more too. A lot more. Used to build porches, he said one night, tapping the armrest with a weak smile. Built this one too. Never thought I'd end up sitting on it, more than I built on it. Another night, he told her about the field behind Maple Hollow where he and Maya used to race when she was little. She always let me win, he said, laughing so softly it almost turned into a cough. Least till she got old enough to outrun me for real. The stories weren't fancy, they weren't deep, but they made him glow, even if the glow was faint. And Lena listened the way people wish others would listen to them, with attention, not obligation. But while his spirit brightened, his body slipped the other way. Some nights he had to sit down slowly, like every bone in him hurt. Some nights he couldn't even finish what she brought. She pretended she didn't notice, but she did. Still there was something new in his eyes, a spark that hadn't been there before. A warmth that told her he was carrying something besides pain now. Every evening she crossed the road, he was waiting back straightened as much as he could manage, hands folded like he didn't want to miss a second of her being there. "You always show up," he told her one night, voice cracking but stronger somehow. "You always wait," she answered. And just like that, the whole porch softened around them. But Maple Hollow didn't stay soft for long. One afternoon, on her way home from the store, she noticed Walter wasn't on the porch. His chair sat empty, rocking slightly in the wind. The bowl was gone. The air around the house felt wrong. She crossed the road fast, faster than she meant to, and knocked on the door. When no one answered, she pushed it open. The house was dim, the air stale. She found him sitting on the floor beside his bed, his breath shallow, his face pale enough to scare her. "Oh my God, Mr. Walter, what happened?" He tried to smile. "Guess I stood up too fast. You shouldn't be alone like this," she said, slipping her arms under his to help him sit up straight. He was lighter than she expected. Too light. He chuckled weakly. "Don't got much choice, do I?" Lena looked around. The room was almost empty. A bed, a chair, a photo frame lying face down on the table. She picked it up and brushed off the dust. A young girl stood beside a young Walter, both smiling at the camera like the future was bright. "Maya?" Lena asked quietly. Walter nodded, eyes getting glassy. "She used to braid my hair, said she'd buy me a new suit when she got her first paycheck." Lena set the picture back gently. "She loved you." He didn't answer at first. When he finally did, his voice was barely there. "She did, until the world convinced her she shouldn't." Something sharp twisted in Lena's chest, not anger, not sadness, something heavier. She helped him back into bed, pulled a blanket over him, and straightened the room the best she could. He watched her through half-closed eyes. "You remind me of her sometimes," he murmured. "The way you don't give up on people." Lena swallowed hard. "Then I'll take that as a compliment." He laughed, soft, broken, but real. She stayed until he drifted to sleep. When she stepped outside, the sun was setting low, turning Maple Hollow orange and gold, like the whole world was holding him gently for once. Her mother was waiting on their porch when she crossed back. "You were in there a while," she said. "He fell," Lena replied. "I helped him up." Her mother nodded slowly. "He's lucky you came by." Lena looked back at Walter's house. "I don't think luck's the right word." "No?" her mother asked.
He doesn't have anyone else, Lena whispered. Maybe someone's just supposed to remember him. Her mother rested a hand on her arm. Just don't lose yourself remembering everybody else. Lena gave a tired smile. Maybe that's how I'll find myself. But that night, when everyone had gone to bed, she couldn't shake the image of Walter on the floor, struggling to breathe, holding onto a photograph he'd turned face down years ago because looking at it hurt too much. She lay awake long after the house went quiet, staring at the soft glow of the moon through her curtain, thinking about a man who'd been waiting for so long he forgot he was allowed to hope again. And even though she didn't say it out loud, not yet, she knew. Tomorrow night, she'd be back. And the next night, and the next, because something inside her already understood the truth. Walter Hill wasn't just someone she fed. He was someone she couldn't walk away from. A few days after finding Walter on the floor, the heat in Maple Hollow finally eased, not much, just enough that people left their doors open in the morning to let the air move. Lena had just come home from her shift at the diner when she saw something strange sitting on the kitchen table. An envelope, not the flimsy white kind bills came in. This one was thick, cream-colored, edges trimmed in gold, her name Lena Reeves, written in careful print across the front. Her mother stood beside the table, arms folded, but the corners of her mouth twitched like she was trying not to smile. "This came for you," she said. Lena wiped her hands on her apron, heart already beating too fast. She hadn't seen anything this official looking in her life. She picked it up, hesitating for half a second, like the paper might vanish if she moved too quickly. "Go on," her mother encouraged. "Open it." Lena slid her thumb under the seal, and pulled out a letter printed on heavy paper. She read the first line, then the second, then stopped breathing somewhere around the third. Her mother leaned in. "Well, I got in," Lena whispered. Her mother blinked. "Got in where?" "The community psychology program," she said, voice cracking. "In Brenton City. Full tuition. They accepted me." For a second, nobody in the house moved. Even her kid sister froze in the doorway, holding a half-eaten biscuit. Then her mother finally smiled, a slow, stunned smile that looked like hope waking up after years of sleeping. "Baby, that's incredible. That's your way out." Lena sat down at the table like her knees couldn't hold her anymore. Her chest felt tight, too full, half joy, half something she couldn't quite name. The letter trembled in her hands. A way out, a future. A chance to learn something meaningful, something that might help her understand people the way she always wanted to. She had dreamed about it for years, applied months ago, told herself she'd never hear back, and now the answer was sitting in her lap. 2 hours away, her mother said softly. "That's not too far." But Lena didn't answer, because across the road, through the open kitchen window, she could see Walter's porch, his empty chair, his dented bowl. She thought about how he'd looked when she helped him into bed. How his breath rattled. How his eyes softened when she stepped into the room. How he whispered, "You remind me of her." Her stomach twisted, hard.
That night, she walked to his house later than usual. The sky had already faded into deep blue by the time she reached the steps. Walter was there, barely illuminated by his porch light, head bowed, hands resting on his knee like he'd been waiting longer than he wanted to admit. "You're late," he said with a small smile. "I know," she replied, setting the bowl in his hands. "Mama needed help fixing the roof again." "It's all right," Walter said. "I figured you'd come." She sat on the porch rail, heart pounding. The letter in her pocket felt heavier than anything she'd ever carried. She didn't know when to bring it up, didn't know how, so she waited until he took a few bites and sighed contentedly. Then she said it. "I got a letter today." He raised his eyebrows. "A good one or a bad one?" "A good one," she said softly. "I got accepted into a psychology program in the city." Walter froze mid-bite. Slowly he lowered his spoon. "Psychology," he repeated. "Helping people, huh?" She nodded. "And the city," he continued. "That's a long way from here." "About 2 hours," he let out a breath. "Well, now that's something." But his eyes flickered. Not jealousy, not disappointment, something quieter, something heavy. "You should be proud," he said. "A chance like that, you don't pass it up." "I'm scared to go," she admitted. He chuckled weakly. "Everyone's scared to leave what they know." "That's not why," she whispered. Walter looked at her, really looked, and his smile faded into something softer, sadder. "You're worried about me," he said gently. Lena swallowed hard. "I don't want to leave you here alone." Walter set the jar aside and leaned back against the porch railing, eyes drifting toward the road. For a moment, he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd thought about this a long time. "Child, I've been alone a long time. You didn't cause that. And you can't fix it by staying." Tears prickled her eyes before she could stop them, but she blinked hard, refusing to let them fall. "You don't need to take care of me," he continued. "You've already done more than anyone else in this town. More than I ever expected from anybody. It doesn't feel right to leave," she whispered. "It feels right because it is right," he said. "You gotta go live the life you've been craving. Don't let an old man's porch keep you stuck in a place that stopped growing." She shook her head. "It's not your porch, it's you." He nodded slowly, touched more deeply than he let on. "And I'm grateful for that. Truly, but you were never meant to stay here your whole life." The crickets hummed in the dark. The air sat still around them. "So what do I do?" Lena finally asked. "You go," Walter said firmly. "When it's time you go, and don't look back with guilt. Look back with pride." He reached out and patted her hand with fingers that trembled but held steady just long enough. "You gave me back something I thought I'd lost for good," he whispered. "Let that be enough." Lena nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her chest. They sat together until the night swallowed the last bit of orange from the sky. She didn't know how long she stayed. She only knew leaving felt harder than it ever had before. But under the porch light, Walter smiled at her with a calm she didn't understand yet, like he'd already made peace with whatever was coming. She just didn't know how soon whatever was coming would arrive. The next couple of days passed in a strange haze. Maple Hollow looked exactly the same. Dusty roads humming porch fans, gossip drifting between screen doors, but something in Lena's world felt off balance, like the ground was shifting under her feet, and she was the only one who noticed. The acceptance letter stayed tucked inside her Bible. She read it every morning. She reread it every night, and every time that same knot tightened in her stomach. Her mother kept giving her the look, the soft, proud, slightly terrified look only moms have when they see a door opening for their kid and know that walking through it might also mean losing them. But the hardest part wasn't the letter. It was the porch across the road, because every time she looked out the window, Walter was already sitting there, waiting, hands folded on his bowl like he didn't know how little time he had left with her. She tried to act normal, but it didn't last. One evening, when the sky was washed in pink and the cicadas were starting their nightly scream, Lena crossed the road with another small jar of stew. But tonight, something in her steps felt heavier, like she was walking toward a truth she couldn't dodge anymore. Walter looked up immediately. "Evening, Miss Lena." She smiled weakly. "Evening, Mr. Walter." He noticed right away. How could he not? He'd spent weeks studying every shift in her face. "You're quiet again," he said, taking the jar. "Been quiet for days." She sat down on the porch rail, letting her legs sway a little to keep her voice steady. "Just thinking." He raised an eyebrow. "About that letter?" She let out a breath. "Yeah. Good." He nodded. "Means you're taking it serious." "That's the problem," she murmured. "I'm taking everything too serious." Walter chuckled softly, but it faded fast. "Tell me what's stirring in that head. Go on." She looked at the road instead of him. It helped her speak. "If I go, I feel like I'm abandoning you." Walter blinked, expression softening. "Oh child. No," she said, shaking her head. "I mean it. You're sick, you're alone, and every night I walk over here, I keep thinking what happens if I'm not here one evening. What if something happens and no one knows, no one checks?" Walter set the jar beside him and straightened up with all the strength he had left. "Lena Reeves, listen to me." She didn't want to, but she did. "You are not responsible for keeping me alive," he said, voice low and steady. "I've been walking toward an end for a long time. Long before you sat on this porch." She clenched her jaw, refusing to cry. "I don't want you to die alone." He smiled, sad, grateful, tired all at once. "I won't. You don't know that." "Yes," he said gently. "I do. Because you walked into my life long enough to make sure I wasn't invisible. That's more company than most folks get in a lifetime." Lena shook her head again, but tears stung her eyes anyway. Walter leaned back, hands clasped on his lap. You remember what I told you? Kindness ain't measured by how long you stay. It's measured by what you leave behind. Easy for you to say, she whispered. You're not the one walking away. Walter let out a soft breath. Yes, I am. She frowned. What does that mean? He looked at her, eyes sharp with clarity she hadn't seen in days. Lena, I've been walking away from life little by little for years. I'm closer to the end than the beginning. And that ain't sad, it's just true. But you're at the part where everything's about to start. She wiped her cheek quickly. It doesn't feel right. That's because the right thing always feels scary, he said. If it didn't scare you, it wouldn't matter enough. The porch grew quiet for a long moment. Only the wind moved, brushing across the dusty yard. Finally, Lena whispered, what if I go and something happens to you while I'm gone? Walter gave her a gentle smile, the kind people give when they've already accepted a truth. Someone else is still fighting. Then it happens. And I go knowing someone cared at the end. That's more than most get. That broke her. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet tear running down her cheek, the kind that came from a place deeper than sadness. Walter reached out with shaky fingers and tapped her hand lightly. You don't lose people by leaving, Lena. You lose them by staying somewhere you don't belong. She exhaled a shaky breath. So, you think I should go? I know you should go, he said. You're meant to help people more than just me. You got a gift. Don't you dare bury it in a town that forgot how to grow. She looked at him then. Really looked, and saw what he meant. This wasn't him pushing her away. This was him giving her permission. The kind he knew she needed to hear. Walter leaned back and smiled faintly. And when you get there you send me a letter. Tell me about the big buildings and the people you're fixin' to help. She nodded slowly. I'll write you every week. He laughed softly. You'll be too busy for that. But I'll still be waitin' on the mailman. She couldn't help but smile. You always know what to say, don't you? No, he whispered. Just lived long enough to know which words matter. And just like that, something inside her settled. Not all the way, but enough. The question wasn't go or stay anymore. It was how to say goodbye before time ran out. The morning Lena was supposed to leave, Maple Hollow felt strangely still. Not quiet, this town was always quiet. But still in a heavier way, like everything was holding its breath. Her small suitcase sat open on the bed. Half packed, half forgotten. She kept folding and unfolding the same shirt without realizing she was doing it. Her mother hovered by the door, trying not to rush her but clearly fighting the urge. The bus leaves at 5, honey. We should leave by 4:30. I know, Lena said, but her voice sounded far away, like someone else had borrowed it. Because from her window, across the road, Walter's porch light, normally still glowing in the early morning, wasn't on. She stared at the empty porch chair, the sagging roof, the bowl missing from its usual spot. The feeling crawling up her spine told her more than her eyes could. Something wasn't right. Her mother stepped closer, voice gentle. Lena, you should go say goodbye. I was going to. Lena said softly. I just wanted to finish packing first. But that was a lie. And the lie felt sharp on her tongue. She couldn't shake the tug in her chest, the one that had led her to him that very first evening. The one that had never been wrong. She zipped the suitcase halfway, grabbed her shoes and crossed the road without bothering to change out of her house clothes. The morning air was cool, but her palms were sweating. Mr. Walter, she called as she stepped onto the porch. No answer. She knocked gently on the door, then harder. It's Lena, can I come in? Still nothing. Her stomach dropped. The door wasn't fully shut, just resting in the frame, like someone had closed it softly. Lena pushed it open and stepped inside. The house was dim, quiet, still in the kind of way a home becomes only after someone stops moving inside it. Mr. Walter, she called again, but her voice cracked. She walked down the small hallway toward the bedroom, each step slower than the last. She already knew, something inside her already knew. He was sitting upright in bed, the blanket pulled to his chest, his hands resting gently on top of it, like he'd been preparing to meet the day. His eyes were closed, his breathing still, his face soft in a way she had never seen before. Like every pain, every ache, every lonely night had finally let go. Lena stopped in the doorway, Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment she didn't move. Couldn't. The world narrowed to him. This old man who had spent years fading, only to find light again at the very end. "Walter," she whispered, though she already knew he wasn't asleep. She took 2 shaking steps forward and placed her hand on his arm. Cold. The kind of cold that didn't come from the weather. The kind of cold that didn't leave. A sound escaped her chest, small and broken, somewhere between a breath and a sob. She covered her mouth, shoulders trembling. She sank onto the edge of the bed, tears spilling before she even felt them fall. "You promised you'd be here," she whispered through a cracking voice. "You promised I'd have time." He hadn't lied, he'd simply run out of it. His nightstand held a small folded paper, her name on it. Her fingers shook as she lifted it, hands barely steady enough to unfold it. "Dear Lena, if you're reading this, then I've gone where the hurt can't reach. Don't be sad for me. You gave me more than I ever expected at the end of my days. Go live your life, child. And when you see the sun break after a long rain, think of me sitting on that porch waiting just a little while longer. Love, Walter." The letter blurred as tears filled her eyes again. She pressed the note to her chest and bowed her head, the weight of the moment pressing down on her until she felt like she might break entirely. But she didn't break. She cried. Quiet, steady shaking. But she didn't fall apart. Because even through the grief, she could feel it. He had left her with something to hold on to. A purpose. A direction. A promise she now had to keep. It took her a long time to stand up. A longer time to leave the house. And even longer to walk back across the road. Her mother met her at the porch steps, saw her face, and didn't ask a single question. She just gathered Lena into her arms, holding her as the morning sun rose over Maple Hollow. "He's gone," Lena whispered into her mother's shoulder. "He's really gone." Her mother closed her eyes, hugging her tighter. "I know, baby. I know." The bus would leave that afternoon, but Lena didn't think about the bus. Not yet. She stood on her porch, looking at the empty house across the road, and understood something that made her cry all over again. Walter didn't die alone. He hadn't felt alone in a long time, and that was because of her. Walter's funeral happened 2 days later, early morning, under a wide oak tree on the edge of the small Maple Hollow cemetery. The air was cool, the sky washed in pale blue, and the kind of silence settled over the town that didn't feel empty. It felt respectful. People showed up, more than Lena expected. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to him in years. Men pretending they didn't whisper about him last month. Women clutching handkerchiefs like they suddenly remembered he'd once built their porches. It was strange, seeing people gather for him now, when he'd waited for them all those lonely evenings. The preacher, Pastor Hayes, stood near the simple wooden casket with his Bible pressed to his chest. He was a calm-looking man with silver hair and kind eyes, the sort of person who spoke softly so you'd lean in to hear him. When he saw Lena standing alone at the front, holding Walter's folded letter in her hand, he approached her gently. "You were close to him," he said quietly. Lena swallowed. "He was my friend." The pastor nodded with a softness that felt like understanding, real understanding. "Then I'm glad you're here. Every soul deserves at least one person who meant something to them." People shifted as the service began. Birds chirped, leaves rustled, the wind whispered just enough to feel like a presence. Pastor Hayes spoke about life and kindness, about quiet men who give more than they had, and about loneliness that goes unseen. His voice was steady, gentle, but the longer he talked, the more Lena felt something building in her chest, a pressure like a truth trying to push its way out. Then he asked, "Is there anyone who would like to say a few words about Walter Hill?" Silence. People glanced around, hesitant. A few cleared their throats. No one stepped forward. It hurt, more than any gossip ever had. Lena stepped up before she could second-guess herself. She stood beside the casket, clutching Walter's letter like a lifeline. Everyone turned toward her, faces lined with curiosity, regret, maybe even guilt. Her voice trembled at first. Walter wasn't just some old man on a porch. He wasn't a burden. He wasn't a ghost. He was a person. A kind one. A hurting one. And someone this town didn't see for far too long.
A few people lowered their eyes. She continued, louder now. He told stories about building houses and fixing fences, but somehow his own home fell apart right in front of everybody. And nobody checked on him. Nobody asked if he was okay. Not until it was too late. The wind picked up, brushing through her hair. But he wasn't alone at the end, she said softly. He wasn't invisible. And if you're wondering how I know, it's because I sat with him. I talked with him. I listened. And he listened to me too. He cared about people even after the world stopped caring about him. Someone sniffled quietly behind her. She unfolded the letter with shaking hands. The last thing he told me, she said, voice cracking, was that I gave him back something he lost years ago. Hope, dignity, the belief that people could still be good. She wiped her cheek quickly. And I want you all to know, he deserved better than what life gave him. But he left this world with peace because he wasn't forgotten at the end. Silence fell heavy over the group. No discomfort, no judgment this time, just the weight of truth. When she stepped back, Pastor Hayes touched her arm gently. Those were needed words, he murmured. You honored him. After the service, people approached her, slowly, cautiously. I never knew he had someone, one woman said. I wish I'd checked on him. A man muttered. He was a good man. I should have done more. Another whispered. Regret hung in the air, but Lena didn't feed it. She simply nodded, holding Walter's letter close. As the crowd thinned, Pastor Hayes walked with her toward the tree line. You know, he said, not many people speak for the forgotten. You did. He wasn't forgotten, she said quietly. Not anymore. He'd be proud of you, the pastor said. And wherever you're going next, take that heart with you. The world needs it. She looked at him, confused. You know about the psychology program. Your mother told my wife, he said with a smile. Congratulations, Lena, you're stepping into a calling. A calling. The word felt big, but it also felt right. That afternoon, Lena walked back home with the kind of heaviness that wasn't grief alone. It was a mixture of grief and clarity. Like she finally understood what Walter had been trying to tell her. Inside, her suitcase still sat half open on the bed. She stood over it for a long moment, then she zipped it shut. Not because she was ready, but because she finally understood she had to go, not just for herself, but for what Walter taught her. As she set the suitcase beside the door, sunlight broke through the clouds, soft and warm, the kind of light that felt like a hand on your shoulder. She whispered, barely audible, I'll make you proud. And for the first time since his passing, the ache in her chest didn't feel like a weight, it felt like a direction. A new turning point. The morning Lena left Maple Hollow felt nothing like a beginning. It felt like standing on the edge of two worlds, one she'd lived in forever, and one she was scared to step into. The sky was overcast, low and gray, the kind of sky that made everything look softer but heavier at the same time. Her suitcase sat on the porch, zipped ready, and for the first time Lena could remember, the weight inside it wasn't the clothing, it was the choice, the leaving, the knowing she would look back at least once. Her mother stood by the door, tying her headscarf tight. Bus comes in 30 minutes, she said gently. We should get going, baby. Lena nodded, but didn't move yet. Across the road, Walter's porch sat empty the way it always had before she stepped into his life. Only now, it looked different, like a story that had ended in the middle of a sentence. The chair was still there, the bowl still dented, the porch light still on even though the sun had risen. Her mother followed her gaze. She rested a hand on Lena's back. You said goodbye the way he needed, she whispered. Now you gotta go live the way he wanted. Lena swallowed hard. I know. They started walking toward the bus stop at the edge of town. The road was quiet. A few neighbors waved with small tender looks, the kind people only give when they finally understand something too late. Pastor Hayes waited near the stop, hands tucked in his coat pockets. Morning, Lena, he said warmly. Brenton City will be lucky to have you. She managed a small smile. Thank you, Pastor. You carry a piece of Walter with you, he added gently. We all saw that at the funeral. Let it guide you, not anchor you. She nodded, appreciating more than she could say. The bus pulled up slowly, brakes hissing, doors opening with a metallic sigh. That sound, ordinary on any other day, hit her in the chest like a final push. Her mother hugged her tight, whispering into her shoulder, "Don't shrink yourself for anybody out there, you hear me?" "I won't," Lena said through a tight throat. "And don't stop writing. And don't stop praying. And don't stop praying. And don't stop believing in what you can do." A small laugh slipped out of Lena, shaky but real. "I won't, Mama." Her mother cupped Lena's face, kissed her forehead and stepped back. Pastor Hayes touched her arm one last time. "Go make this matter." Lena climbed the bus steps slowly, almost reluctantly, and found a seat by the window. Her breath caught as she looked out at the town she had loved, hated, survived, and was finally leaving. The bus rumbled forward. She saw Mrs. Hill watering her flowers, old Mr. Carter opening his shop, kids on bikes weaving through the dusty street, a dog sleeping on a porch. All the tiny things that made Maple Hollow what it was, small, tired, but full of people who occasionally remembered how to be good. Then the road curved, and suddenly Walter's house came into view one last time. Even from the moving bus, she saw it clearly: the chair, the bowl, the porch light, still glowing faintly even in daylight, like it refused to turn off without her permission. Lena pressed her palm to the window. "I'll carry you with me," she whispered, "everywhere." The bus continued down the highway, Maple Hollow shrinking behind her until it disappeared into a blur of trees and dust. She leaned back in her seat, heart full, eyes wet, but steady. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what was ahead, because she wasn't going into it empty. She was carrying every lesson Walter had given her: kindness first,
courage next, and the belief that sometimes the smallest acts change everything. As the city skyline peaked faintly on the horizon, Lena let out a slow breath. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm ready." She didn't know that her journey was about to collide with something unexpected, someone who held a piece of Walter's past and a message she wasn't prepared for. But she'd learn soon enough. Years passed faster than Lena expected. Brenton City became home in a way Maple Hollow never fully could. The noise, the rush, the strangers, it all felt overwhelming at first, but little by little she learned how to breathe inside that chaos. She finished her psychology program. She worked in community clinics. She learned to talk to people who felt invisible, because she had once known a man who lived that exact feeling every day. But no matter how far she went, certain things stayed with her. Walter's letter pinned above her desk, the dented bowl she'd kept as a reminder, the porch light she bought for her apartment, left on every night, even when she slept. Some nights when rain hammered the city windows, she'd close her eyes and whisper, "I hope you see it, Mr. Walter." She built a new life, but never let go of the pieces that shaped her old one. Until one afternoon, 7 years after she left Maple Hollow, something happened that cracked her world open again. It was a slow Tuesday at the clinic. The waiting room was quiet, the kind of lull that made the day feel suspended. Lena stepped out to call the next patient. A woman in her late 20s stood up, neat clothes, nervous hands, eyes that seemed to carry a whole storm behind them. "Hi," the woman said softly. "I'm Maya Hill." The name hit Lena like cold water. Not a coincidence. Couldn't be. Her heart lurched so hard she almost lost her breath. She cleared her throat. "Come in." The woman followed her into the small counseling room and sat in the chair across from her. She fidgeted with the zipper on her bag, eyes darting everywhere, walls, floor, hands, anywhere but Lena's face. For a moment neither spoke. Then Maya whispered, "I'm not really sure how to start." "It's okay," Lena said gently. "Start wherever you can." Maya took a shaky breath. "I came here because I need help forgiving someone who's already gone." Lena's stomach tightened. "My father," Maya added. Everything in Lena went still, but outside she stayed composed, her voice even. "Tell me about him." Maya swallowed hard. "I left home years ago. He always wanted me to go chase something bigger, so I did. But then life got busy. I got busy, and I kept telling myself I'd go home when things slowed down." She clenched her jaw, but things never slowed down. Lena didn't speak. She let Maya's words settle. Maya continued in a voice that cracked at the edges. "One day I saw something online. Someone had posted about a funeral in Maple Hollow. A man who died alone and a girl who used to bring him food every night. She paused, shaking her head. I didn't even know it was him until I saw the name. I had missed everything. Lena's breath hitched, but Maya kept going. I tried to go back, but by the time I got there he was already gone. And I don't know why I'm here or why I'm telling you all this. But, she broke off, tears filling her eyes. I just need to know if he ever forgave me. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath, steadying her heart. When she opened them again her voice was soft but sure. He forgave you long before you ever asked. Maya looked up sharply, tears spilling. How do you know? Lena reached slowly into her desk drawer. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from the importance of what she was about to do. She pulled out a faded envelope, the second letter, the one she had found months after Walter's death, tucked behind an old Bible inside his belongings. She slid it across the table. This is yours, Lena said. He wrote it for you. Maya stared at it like it was a miracle she wasn't sure she deserved. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was Walter's careful handwriting, old, shaky but full of the love he never stopped carrying. My girl, if this reaches you, know this: you were never too late in my heart. I forgave you before there was anything to forgive. Life takes people in different directions, but it never took my love from you. If I don't get to tell you in person, then let this letter do the talking. I am proud of you. Always was, always will be. Love, Dad. Maya's face crumpled. She covered her mouth, sobbing, not loud, but deep, raw, the kind that comes from years of guilt finally breaking open. Lena moved to sit beside her, placing a gentle hand on her back. He waited for you, Lena whispered. Not with anger, with hope. Maya sobbed harder. And he didn't die alone, Lena continued softly. I was with him, every night. He talked about you. He loved you. He never stopped. Maya turned, tears streaking down her face. Why would you do that for him? Lena smiled, a small bittersweet smile. Because someone once told me that kindness changes hands. He gave me something to carry forward. I guess this is part of carrying it. Maya whispered, thank you. Not small, not timid, but grateful, soul-deep grateful. For the first time in years the ache in Lena's chest eased, not because she'd forgotten Walter, but because she finally understood his story wasn't over. It was still unfolding, in her and Maya, in every act of kindness that rippled outward because of him. And as Maya clutched her father's letter like a lifeline, Lena felt something shift in her own heart. A closing, a healing, a quiet, powerful peace. Walter had waited for his daughter, and life strangely, gently had given her back to him at last. After that day in the clinic, the day Lena placed Walter's letter into his daughter's trembling hands, something shifted. Not just in Maya, not just in Lena, but in the space between them. It was like Walter had stitched the two of them together across 7 silent years, tying loose ends with a single envelope and a lifetime's worth of forgiveness. For weeks afterward, Maya visited the clinic regularly, not always as a patient, sometimes just as someone who wasn't finished talking. She asked Lena what Walter liked to eat, what he sounded like when he laughed, whether he coughed a lot, whether he seemed scared. Lena answered every question, every detail, every memory she'd held onto like a gift. And eventually one afternoon when the city sun burned soft through the blinds, Maya said the words that changed everything. I want to build something in his name. Lena looked up, surprised. Like what? A shelter, Maya said, voice steady with a determination she hadn't had when they first met. A safe place, for people like him, people who feel forgotten, people who don't ask for help because they think no one sees them. Lena felt her breath catch. Maya continued, I don't want my father's story to end with regret. I want it to turn into something bigger than both of us. Lena nodded slowly, because she felt the same thing burning in her chest. I'll help, Lena said. Really, Walter didn't leave only one of us with a mission. Lena replied, he left it to both of us. They started planning right away, meeting in coffee shops, in the clinic after hours, even in Lena's tiny apartment where the porch light still glowed every night like a promise. They found an old building near the bus line, run down, forgotten, the kind of place most people didn't bother glancing at. But one look, and Lena knew Walter would have sat on the steps. Walter would have waited there too. Walter would have called it home, long before it earned the name. Renovation took months, permits, fundraisers, volunteers, long nights, arguments, laughter, tears neither of them admitted to. Maya handled the finances, Lena handled the community connections, and slowly the building changed. New walls, bright windows, warm lighting, a kitchen big enough to serve meals, rooms lined with clean beds and thick blankets. Outside, they hung a sign in brushed steel, "The Walter House, a place where no one waits alone." When they unveiled it, people from Maple Hollow came, even the pastor, even Mrs. Hill, even neighbors who once whispered behind fences. Some came with flowers, some with guilt, some with quiet pride. But one thing was the same for everyone. They all said his name out loud for the first time in years: Walter Hill. A man who died in a small town porch chair, and somehow ended up inspiring an entire building. On opening day, the shelter filled fast, older men with tired eyes, women running from bad nights, teens who had nowhere else to sleep. Lena walked through the halls, answering questions, giving directions, checking blankets, doing everything she'd learned from years of working with the unseen. At one point, she stepped into the main lobby and froze. A lamp glowed in the corner. A warm, soft yellow glow, the same kind of glow that once illuminated an old man's porch in Maple Hollow. She swallowed the tightness in her throat. Maya stepped beside her. "He'd like it, wouldn't he?" Lena nodded. "He'd call it too fancy." They laughed, quiet but real. Then Maya added, "But he'd sit right here anyway." Lena smiled through tears. "And he'd wait, just like he always did." That night, after the shelter finally quieted, Lena stood outside under the streetlights, staring at the glowing sign. A breeze brushed her hair, warm, peaceful, almost familiar. She looked up at the sky, the same sky Walter used to stare at from his porch, and whispered, "We built it, Mr. Walter, and it's not going anywhere." The wind moved again, not strong, not loud, just enough to feel like a yes. And that was how Walter Hill, a man the world once overlooked, became the heart of something that would keep hundreds of souls from fading the way he almost did. His story didn't end on that porch, it started there. Years passed, but the Walter House never once felt old. Some places age, some places fade, but this one, it breathed. Every night, the building glowed warm from the inside out. Voices laughing over dinner, footsteps in the hall, soft conversations drifting through the common room. People came broken, tired, invisible, and left a little more whole than when they arrived. And in every corner of the shelter, in every small kindness Lena witnessed, she felt Walter's presence lingering like a quiet blessing. Lena stayed part of the shelter, even as her career grew. She trained counselors, she taught workshops, she led support groups, but she always made time, every single week, to walk through the rooms slowly, checking lights, checking chairs, checking faces, not because she had to, but because she remembered what it felt like to step onto a porch and find someone waiting for her. Maya visited often too, sometimes to help, sometimes to sit in the lobby, after everyone left, sometimes just to hold her father's letter, one more time. She and Lena became the kind of friends grief creates, tied not by shared history, but by shared purpose. Then one evening, long after most of the city had gone to sleep, Lena left the shelter and stood outside under the night sky. A warm summer wind brushed past her, carrying the scent of street food and faraway music. Behind her, the shelter glowed, bright at the entrance, soft in the windows. The main porch light flickered once, then steadied. She smiled. That porch light had been burning every night since the day they opened. Every night, she reached out and touched the metal railing, the cool surface grounding her. She closed her eyes and remembered Maple Hollow, the dust roads, the simmering heat, the sagging porch where she first saw him. Walter sitting with his bowl, Walter waiting for a voice, Walter smiling when she crossed the road. She felt the memory settle warm in her chest, not painful anymore, just present. A taxi rolled past, someone laughed in the distance. The world was moving, fast and loud and messy, but right here, something stayed still. Something stayed true. Lena opened her eyes and looked up at the glowing sign. The Walter House, a place where no one waits alone. The porch light burned steady, golden, unwavering, just like the one across the road in Maple Hollow, just like the one that had shined the night she left, just like the one Walter always promised to leave on for her. She whispered into the warm wind, "I kept the light on, Mr. Walter." For a moment the air shifted around her, soft and familiar, the way a loved one brushes past you without needing to speak. She smiled, tears welling but gentle this time, because she realized something. The porch light was never about a house, it was about a promise she was still honoring. And as long as she kept helping the forgotten, as long as she kept listening, as long as she kept walking toward the lonely and the hurting, that light would never go out.
She took one last look at the glowing building, feeling its warmth spill into the street, then turned and walked away into the night, steady, calm, carrying every piece of Walter's legacy inside her. Because his story hadn't ended with him, it lived through her, through Maya, through every person who found shelter beneath that golden porch light. And that was the true ending, a light that kept shining, for Walter, for Lena, and for everyone who needed it. The porch light never went dark.